Hi everyone, this video is about Week 6 activities, and we'll dive into two topics, query a database and information management. So let's take a look at what it means to query a database. If we look at the structure of a database, well, it contains tables, and all our answers are in there, but there's a whole lot more. And queries, well, they're simply a way of returning the desired information from within those tables. And as you'll see with our final project, we have tables like movies and directors, and we'll create queries in order to retrieve information from those tables. Let's take a look at the different types of queries. The first we'll talk about is a select or a simple query, and that retrieves data from one or more tables in your database or other queries that are there and displays those results in a data sheet. You can also use a select query to group data and to calculate sums and averages, counts, and other types of totals. A second type of query that we'll use on our final project is a parameter query, and that's simply one that prompts you for input before it runs. The query then uses your input as criteria that controls the results. For example, a typical parameter query asks you for starting high and low values and then returns records that fall within those values. There are a few other types of queries that we won't be getting into in our portfolio project. One's known as a crosstab query, and that uses row headings and column headings so that you can see your data in terms of these two different categories. Another type of query is the action query, and that actually alters your data in your database. For example, you can create an action query to create a completely new table, or add or delete any of the data in your tables. Another type of query is an SQL query, otherwise pronounced a SQL query, and that's a statement that you write in structured query language, or SQL. And SQL is an advanced way to query, update, and manage your relational databases. And here you can see an example of a SQL query that I created based on our final portfolio project. In fact, all of the queries that you make for the portfolio project can be viewed in different modes, and one mode is the SQL query mode, and that'll let you take a look at those commands that are actually run against your different tables in your database. So for the portfolio project, you'll create two different queries in steps 8 and 9. One will be a simple query, the other one a parameter query, and these will both be based on two tables, and you'll get to use any criteria you feel appropriate. So in our database for our portfolio project, you have two tables. One is a movies table with all of these different fields. The other is a directors table that contains a set of different information about directors. And there's a relationship that's set up between the two based on the director ID. And it's that relationship between the two tables that will allow us to use them both in any query. So for steps 8 and 9, it asks you to use any criteria you feel is appropriate. And that really comes down to what information do you need. Remember that our application is that of somebody who's going into a video store and wants to retrieve specific information. If we wanted to create single table queries, we might want to return the movies in the horror category, or return Orson Welles' brief biography. But with a multi-table query, we can use that relationship between the two tables, and we can create a query that returns all the movies directed by Orson Welles. So to sum up with a few takeaways here, there are multiple types of queries, and we'll get some experience with simple and parameter types, but know there are other types like crosstab, action, and SQL type queries. And know that we can make queries with two or more tables to get the answers to more interesting questions, as long as a relationship exists between the different tables that we're using. Let's dive into our next topic on information management. Now here's our discussion question for the week. Wow, it's pretty big and it has a lot of parts. So let's tease it apart and take a look at each part of the questions that are being asked. Let's start with that first part. Find a definition for information management. Let's take a look at that for a moment. Well, taking a look around at our personal life, we know we have a lot of information, whether it's recipes or notes or maybe it's contact information or financial information. Now, it all doesn't have to be written. It could be information like music or videos. And if we look around our workplace, wow, there's emails, there's snail mail, and then there's calendars and meeting invitations. And we'll use all sorts of tools and technology to work with that information, whether it's our computer or maybe a smartphone. And for our music and video, I'm sure many of you are already using iTunes. And to manage our email, you might have an email account through Yahoo or Microsoft or even Google. And then all of us are becoming experts at using the Microsoft Office suite of tools like Excel, Access, Word, or Outlook. And now a lot of that information is for you. But that's not always the case. Sometimes that information is for maybe this guy. Or maybe it's for her. So let's clear the slate and think about this a little differently. We need maybe a framework that holds all of these different things together. What you'll see in the discussion this week is that many of you will go out and research and find all sorts of great frameworks to think about information management, and this is just one of them, where we can think about information in terms of three different things. The first is the data and the process that we use to organize the data. The second category is the technology and the tools that we use. And lastly, there are the people that use the information and the technology to get their work done. Now, returning to the discussion question and teasing it apart, you're supposed to use the internet and not Wikipedia, and be sure to properly cite your sources. And when we talk about citing your sources, please use an APA formatted citation. And for help with APA formatted citations, returning to our Angel Classroom, you can go to the Facts tab, and there you'll see a nice link for our Bryant and Stratton College APA Style Guide. So let's return to our discussion question and take a look at the next part. It asks you to visit the virtual library and read this particular article by Blair B. on the Enterprise Content Management Primer in the Information Management Journal. So we'll need to use the virtual library again. Remember, if you have any questions, post them up to the questions forum or write me a quick email. I'll get right back to you. Thank you all, and let's have a fantastic week.